Hello and welcome to the second and last section of Section 8, Optimizing Horizon View Desktop Session Connections. So what are we going to learn in this particular video? So in this video we're going to learn how to optimize and monitor the performance of our VDI desktops. And there are several ways we're going to do this. The first is using the Horizon GPO bundles that came with our Horizon download. This allows us to configure AD-based policies that control the desktop sessions from security to USB devices and agents and clients, etc. Then we're going to look at the PC over IP tuning tool that allows you to install this on one of the virtual desktop machines to enable you to get an idea of the bandwidth, session latency, and anything to do with the PC over IP protocol. Then finally, we're going to look at one of the market-leading third-party solutions, and that's Liquidware Stratosphere UX, which is a full end-user experience monitoring tool. It's the same tool we use for our assessment phase, for our tuning, and also for some of our troubleshooting and monitoring. So now we're looking at optimizing our desktop sessions, not to be confused with optimizing the operating system itself. So what we're looking at doing here is fine-tuning the actual session and the delivery of the session and any policies that we want to apply that basically manage that session, whether we use USB devices, whether we don't, and how basically the desktop is delivered. So there's three elements that we're going to look at in this particular section. And the first of these is what comes as standard with Horizon. And that's a thing called the VMware Horizon Extras bundle. You'll see that as part of the download when you download the Horizon software. And basically that is a zip file which we've actually unzipped here, and what you see in here is a whole bunch of ADMX template files. So you can see here they're talking about the View Horizon agent, it's talking about some of the client parts, PC over IP, some thin print, etc. We also have a number of, if we click on ENUS, ADML templates as well to control all of our Horizon components. So what do we do with those templates? Quite simply, if we just minimize this window down, we copy them into our Windows Server directories with the other policies. So you can see here, if you copy them into the C:\Windows policy definitions, and then we have the ENUS, that's where our ADML templates go. If we scroll down, we can see there's the PC over IP ones, and you'll see some others down here relating to VMware. So there's our View Persona Management, View Agent, and other parts to our Horizon solution. If we go up one directory level, here's our ADMX templates. So they're in the C:\Windows/policy definitions folder. So we've literally just copied those ADMX templates over. So if we scroll down, we will see some of the VMware templates in here. Keep scrolling. So there's our View Agent Direct Connection. There's our clients, there's Blast, and we'll see all of our VMware Horizon stuff in there as Persona Management, for example. So we've copied all the templates across. So now we need to make some policies to take advantage of those templates. So they're already built for us, but we need to make the policy. So the first thing we need to do is create a OU, so an organizational unit. And we've created one here called Horizon Desktops. So here it is, Horizon Desktops properties. So we can see the properties, who it's managed by, etc. And the reason we want to do that is because we want to keep Horizon Desktops away from normal desktops or physical machines, because these policies that we're going to apply only apply to virtual desktop machines. If we start applying them to physical desktop machines, then we could possibly break our physical desktop machines because they won't understand some of the policies, because it's relating to view agents, etc. On the flip side as well, we don't want to apply physical policies to our Horizon desktops because they may be addressing some particular piece of hardware which isn't present in our virtual desktop. That could cause the virtual desktop to stop working. So we've got our OU there, so that's where our desktops are going to live. And then basically we need to apply the policy to that. So if we go into our group policy management screen, we expand out our domain, our PVO Lab domain. We can see our Horizon Desktops OU here. And then basically what we've done is we've created a GPO in this domain and linked it here. So that's our policy there. And then if we go in and we edit that policy, we can see here's our policy editor. So if we go to computer configuration, expand policies, and expand our administrative templates, you will see that there's some new options in here. So the first one here is PC over IP client session variables. So these are the session variables for PC over IP on the client. And as you see, there are a number of options from client image cache sizes, event log cleanups, SSL protocols, MTU, bandwidth, whether we want to disable audio within the session, configure maximum session bandwidth. If you want to choose one of these, we literally double click, open the policy. If you want to enable it, we click on enable and we click apply to apply that particular configuration. Then we have our PCI over IP session variables. So again, similar set of PC over IP client. We can scroll down so we can turn off things like build to lossless. So that's the feature where PC over IP builds the picture absolutely pixel perfect. That takes up some bandwidth. Maybe you don't want that to happen, so we can configure things like that. Then we have policies for blast, so we can control the image quality. So if we enable that, we can do low JPEG quality, mid and high, so we can change the settings for that. By the way, if you want to know all about these different policy settings and the options, these are all available in the Mastering Horizon 7 book, also by Pact Publishing. And in there's a chapter that goes through every single individual policy setting. So we're just going to run through these at a high level. So now we have Horizon client configuration. So here's our USB configuration, so we can allow smart cards, maybe keyboards and mice, device splitting. We can look at our security settings. We can unlock remote sessions when the machine's unlocked. Scripting definitions, so log on passwords, server URLs, and then the settings in the root folder. Then we have our URL redirection. So what do we want to redirect? So there we can enable that. So we can put in our options there to redirect URLs. If we look at the agent configuration, so we can configure the agent, the security of the agent. There's persona management. So now we can configure our user profiles, so the desktop UI, hiding offline file icons, which folders do we want to redirect. Remember that you'll need the view persona management agent on the desktop for this to work, and the folder structure configured on a file server to store these profiles, because that's what's going to happen here. So if you clicked on My Documents and you enable that, it wants to know where you are going to redirect this to, and that would be a // path type approach in there. We also have scanner redirection, smart card redirection, we have our option for true SSO, and a whole raft of pre-built templates to configure our Horizon sessions. Common configuration options, security performance, and then our server configuration as well. So we can work all the way through those and configure our view environment to be controlled exactly how we want it to be. So next we're going to look at the PC over IP tuning tool. So now we've actually logged on to the desktop of one of our virtual desktop machines. This being a Windows 7 box. What we've done is we've browsed to our file share, into which we've copied the PC over IP configuration tool. So it's literally a double click and run that, and you will see it pop up on our taskbar here. So if we click on there, we can see there's a number of profiles we can activate. So there's a default profile, which tells you there it's a maximum frames per second of 30. We've got the image quality, maximum initial quality, build to lossless, yes, and then we've got our maximum audio bandwidth, etc. Then we have another one for our WAN, and then we have another one for a task worker with different settings. So we can actually activate those pre-built, or we can build our own. And building our own here, we can see there's the default. So if we chose our WAN, we can see that it's going to change these sliders, and then we can save that profile. So here we can set, say, the maximum session bandwidth, the session bandwidth floor, and for the audio, whether we have build to lossless on or off. and then the initial quality, go 100%, minimum, 0, or maximum frames per second. We can restore the defaults, we can delete the profile, or we could save that profile if we wanted to create a new profile. If we go back to our tool, we have another number of options. So if we click on the icon, we can clear the profile settings, we can show session stats. So that will tell us in real time what this session is doing. Because we're not connected to it via View right now, it won't show anything, but it will tell you how long the session's been running, any packet loss, the latency, and the CPU utilization for PC over IP. We also have the session health, so we can give a health score here, so we can see how many packets we're losing, the latency, variance, and the bandwidth. So this tool is quite useful to run on the virtual desktop machines themselves, just to get an idea of monitoring the actual bandwidth. In the next part, we're going to have a look at a bit more of an in-depth look at how to manage some of these virtual desktop machines. So to get a more advanced look into our virtual desktop environment, we're actually going to use Liquidware Stratosphere UX. So this is a tool that's been used throughout our Horizon deployment because it was used in the assessment phase to gather the metrics of the environment, and it was used to now tune the environment, and it can also be used as a troubleshooting tool as well, which is kind of what we're looking at now. So just to give you a quick run through of what the tool can deliver to you. So we've logged on and we've gone to this new feature in Stratosphere UX called Spot Checks. And this is going to give us a quick machine and user score so we can see what's behaving and what's maybe not behaving quite so well. So for example, here we can see we've got some B+ scores, we've got some A-, and we've got some A's and AE+. And again, down here for our scores on our machines, we've got some B+, we've got some B-, etc. So that means we can now start to look and drill into particular machines. So we've picked this particular machine because it was coming up with just a B+ score. So now we've started to drill down. So we've done what's called a 360-degree view. So that's going to give us pretty much every piece of information about this desktop that is possible. So we can look here at different login times, for example. So we can see some login delays, how long it took to actually get to a DC and get a response back. If that's long, maybe there's a problem with the domain controller. We can see how long policies have taken to launch, how long it took to launch the shell. So we can see that's all okay, but what we're looking for is some of the colors. So if we scroll down here, we see some red. So we can see we've got some quite high IOPS, and we can also see here some of the utilization. So it's going to actually tell you things like the disk queue, and it's telling you not just that it's red, why it's red. We're going to see here, we've got an amber warning here, because the disk space used is getting quite high. If we carry on down, we can now see that the app load time is now 16.6 seconds. That's maybe a bit on the high side. It's out of our tolerances that we set. So maybe we've got an application there that's taking a bit longer to load than ought to be. The one that is kind of a bit concerning here that we've identified straight away is the CPU queue is at 10. That needs to be below 2. That can demonstrate that we've got some constraints on our CPU on possibly the host server, or maybe this desktop is doing too much. It needs too much resource and we've not allowed for that. If we carry on down, we can also see our upload time to CPU queue, but also now the network latency, 120 milliseconds. That's airing up to being a bit on the high side, so it's flagged that as a warning. If we scroll down, we've got some soft page fault. To see our network latency again. We can see here there was an app load time caused by Microsoft Outlook that took 36.3 seconds to load. We might want to go in and find out why that is. Could be maybe one of those good old offline cache files that was taking ages for Outlook to come up. We've got some ambers and some kind of yellows here. So Camtasia Studio's taking a bit long to load, as was Windows Explorer, as was Microsoft Teams. Carry on down, we can see that there was some very high CPU usage and some very high memory usage. And we can see here that VMware Workstation's running. maybe if this is already a virtual desktop machine, why would you have VMware Workstation running? Maybe you didn't pick this up on an inventory, and maybe you need to correct that, because if you've got a virtual desktop environment, then give that user a temporary desktop, take Workstation off this machine, and you won't have those resource problems any longer. So if we carry on scrolling down, we again can see that we had some high CPU usage. And if we carry on down, we can see some of the alerts, the event logs, etc., etc. But we get a real good picture of this machine and what it's doing and why it's doing it. So we can start to drill down into some of these. So, at that particular time, say 5 o'clock there, machine name, we had a few issues. We could actually click on there and then start to drill down further into what those problems actually were. If we go back to the main screen, we just run through some of the other cool features within Stratosphere. We've got the dashboards view. So if we just let that load up for a second, that will give us a dashboard view of what's going on in our environment. So it's just preparing the dashboards. So they will pop up. So this is having a look across our entire environment. So it just takes a couple of seconds to go get that information. So now we can see on some of the dashboards, we can see login delays, user counts, machine counts, app load time. So we've got a red there. So coloured red because it's taken longer than 30 seconds. So we could expand that out and start to drill into that and find out which app and potentially why that is. And also trending as to, does it happen every Tuesday? Does it happen every Wednesday? At what time it happens? Then we have the inspector's view. So in the inspector's view, this is where we can really start to drill down into absolutely everything. So we get a high level view here. So we can see already some app load times on the high side, CPU times high, memory used quite high, disk I/O, etc. And then the graph at the top. So here we can actually start to drill into other areas. So we can look at machines, we can look at logins, applications. So for logins, we can drill right down into the login process, for example, right down to each individual service that's being loaded. So we can change the date range. So we can go for today, yesterday, today plus another couple of days, weekly, monthly, or choose a custom date, entirely up to you. We can login names, machine groups. We can look at boot, login events, event steps. And here we can go through the whole user profile service, whether it's a group policy, user profile, or whichever it is. We can look at the graph, we can change times, etc. Maybe we want to look at remote display. Maybe we're having some latency issues or users reporting problems around the display on their machine. So if we go into here, we can pick which protocol. So obviously looking at VMware solutions, it may be PC over IP, even includes BLAST. So we can go and monitor the BLAST protocol so we can see how much session has been used, connection time, how much data was sent, etc., etc. And finally, we're just going to have a quick look at the trends and top consumers, because this is where we're going to do the compare and contrast between our before and after. So the first thing we can see is kind of our trend. So here's our UX experience score for today. Machines, the users, machine groups, I/O, our CPU queues, application load times. So we can kind of see the trends. We also have a little widget here so we can actually drill into these graphs a bit further for the scale, where it's by machine groups, today, or however. So we can select the dates on there as well. Then on our compare trend, we can see different dates for different trends. So, for example, we could compare today to today and 2 days ago to see, what was happening in our environment. Was it happening before? Is there a trend forming? And we can do that for all of these elements here. So CPU, memory, and our remote display and our logins. So that gives you a quick, brief run through of the Liquidware Stratosphere UX solution to help with our optimization of our desktop performance so that our end users get the best out of their desktops. So we've also looked at the PC over IP protocol tuning tool, and we've also looked at some of the integrated Horizon Active Directory policy tuning options. So now we've reached the end of the course. In this course, we started by looking at some of the particular features of Horizon. Then we walked through an installation and the architecture, and we used an example lab to build out to give you examples along the way. After we'd installed all the components of the connection server, security server and replica server, we went on to build our virtual desktop machine images, one for Windows 7 and one for Windows 10. We then configured those images, we optimized the images, and then we got them ready for delivery to the end users. We then built our desktop pools, so this enabled end users to log into a pool and to be able to log on to a desktop within the pool. The pools being the way that we configure the virtual desktops for the end users. And we created a number of pools, using instant clones, linked clones, and manual desktop pools. We then went through the Horizon clients. How does an end user actually connect to the virtual desktop? So we looked at clients for all the various platforms. We also looked at thin clients, zero clients, and how to repurpose existing devices to turn them into thin clients. We also looked at how to connect using the browser. Then finally, in the section we just covered, we looked at how we would optimize the session. So looking at things like the templates and using tools to monitor our bandwidths and our logins and our application load times, and just to monitor the overall end user experience. So that brings us to the end of the course. I hope you enjoyed the course, and thank you for taking the time out to take this course.